Good morning. I'm starting this video off with some terrible news. I mentioned in my last video that we were applying for this amazing apartment here in Copenhagen, and it was like a lottery system with the applications. Like they literally just drew a name from a hat, and unfortunately we did not get the apartment, which is so sad. I really loved it. And I'm like a neurotic person and I had already mentally designed this apartment like down to the centimeter. So I figured like, why not at the very least get some content out of this and share with you guys the apartment and how I designed it in my head. Honestly, before I ever even saw it, I had thought about most of this before I went to the open house. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today. We're running through how I can obsess over an apartment and basically finish designing it before I move in. I'm like one of those crazy people who sees a photo of somebody on Tinder and already imagines their entire life with them. That's me, but with like houses and apartments. So yeah, let me introduce you to the apartment that we did not get. That's so beautiful. So this is the building. The thing you have to understand about this place is it would be the perfect location. It's like 5 seconds from all of our favorite wine bars, cafes, vintage shops, everything that's good in the coolest neighborhood in Copenhagen. And what's really interesting about this apartment is the front entrance is actually from like an outdoor balcony walkway. Like the stairs bring you up to this walkway, and this is the front door right here on like the angled wall there. Look how pretty the apartment is, and it's big. We've been living in such a small apartment that we've been subletting for most of our time here, and this is just dreamy to have like a big open space that doesn't feel like claustrophobic. So yeah, here are the photos. It's all really nice, renovated, nice floors, everything that you could want. Something I also really like about this building is the windows and doors. In general, I think this building is a really good example of what I'm talking about when I say that modernism and stripping away unnecessary ornament doesn't necessarily need to make a building feel cold and ugly and not nice. Like if you look at the exterior of this building, there's not actually any like decorative elements or unnecessary ornament, but it still feels very beautiful and very charming, right? I mean, at least to me. And I think that's because it's using very carefully considered scale and human proportions that aren't unique to classical buildings. And that's evident in a lot of different ways, including the windows and the brick material and all these things that I've sort of talked about in other videos. So I really love this building. I think it's really fantastic. And I think those elements are having a really nice effect on the interior as well, mainly from the panels and the windows and the door. And the view of the apartment is actually looking onto a cemetery. A lot of the green spaces in Copenhagen are actually cemeteries. I think it's actually quite nice. So you can see that all of the windows are looking out onto these trees and nice greenery, which I feel like, at least from my experience, it's pretty unique to be in the city center of Copenhagen and have that kind of view. So that's something else I really loved. And yeah, it has 2 small bedrooms, a bathroom with a washer and dryer, which is amazing here. A dryer is very important to me as an American. So yeah, basically to me, this apartment was really perfect. So I know that housing all over the world is very different, and someone might be watching this in Wisconsin or something and think this apartment looks tiny, but to me, it's really, really big. And one of my favorite things about this listing that I came across, which by the way, I saw this like half an hour after it was posted on the housing site here, and I immediately messaged them and offered to pay the deposit the same day before seeing the apartment. So if they weren't using this very frustrating lottery system, I really believe that this would be our home. I'm mourning it. It's so tragic, but life goes on, and we'll find something better. Maybe. But anyway, as I was saying, the great thing about this listing is that it came with a floor plan. And as a designer, I get very excited when I see a floor plan in an apartment listing, especially when it has dimensions, which this one did. So that gave me an excellent opportunity to draw up a space plan. If you're in a similar situation and crushing on an apartment really hard and you have a floor plan without dimensions on it, you can typically use standard dimensions like the width of a door or something to get a general idea of the dimensions of the whole space. I've definitely done that my fair share of times. I do this a lot, and I don't know if that's weird or not. I guess it's not actually that weird because a lot of people that reach out to me for design consultations are wanting to speak about a space that they haven't moved into yet, and sometimes haven't even signed a lease for yet. So I'm not the only one. Probably a lot of you guys that like my content also do this. So I think if you want to design a space like this that you're not actually in, it's really important to start with the floor plan. And what I typically do when I'm looking at a floor plan, let me get rid of the text on this plan. Basically, I think it's most important to look at the architectural features of the space, like doors, windows, stairs, things that you absolutely can't change and are just features of the home, and let that inform the space plan. So how I typically think about floor plans is letting those features kind of inform a grid, which I'll draw on this plan for you guys. I think thinking about the implied grid of a floor plan like this is one of the best way to understand circulation patterns, especially the grids that are implied by the doors. In general, this apartment doesn't really have that many limitations, which is something else that I really like about it. A lot of apartments in Copenhagen, especially the ones in very old buildings, have pretty hectic floor plans with like a lot of haphazard angles. So I really loved that this one was like more orderly. I like spaces like that feel like they make sense. So looking at this grid, I feel like it's pretty obvious that you would sort of have just a natural like H-shape circulation pattern because you have these doors in all four corners of the room. So it makes most sense to have a dining table that's close to the kitchen and a living room that's probably adjacent to that wall between the two bedroom doors. And then letting our grid lines like further inform that, we can basically understand where the like living room and dining room will start and end. Here specifically, I think that large window will basically be framing the circulation space between the dining table and the living room. So I would probably try pretty hard to get a rug that could be in line with the edge of the window there. And I would center the dining table on the wall between the window and the front door. I hope I'm like communicating that well and it makes sense, but basically letting the elevation, like the vertical features in the space, inform the floor plan is really beneficial, and it always just makes a space feel like it makes more sense. If you have like a window or a door that's kind of cut between two like zones, it usually feels pretty off. Obviously, the window that I'm saying would kind of form the like circulation zone is pretty big. Like that would be a lot of space to give over just to circulation. So what I would do is have a living room rug be in line with the edge of the window, and then have furniture with its front two legs kind of stepping into that circulation zone. So the living room space is still going to feel defined and like in line with the window, but you're actually going to get more space. And the same can be said for the dining room chairs, which obviously when they're pulled out, they'll kind of be in that circulation grid column. I don't know what you want to call it. Okay, so we have the kind of like square of the living room defined. And as far as the furniture layout goes, my boyfriend and I like to watch TV. So I would definitely want this to feel like a very comfortable, loungy environment with the TV up against the wall. And I think it's pretty obvious to me that the TV should go on the wall between the two bedroom doors, with the sofa facing it. I don't love that this creates a situation where the back of the sofa is to the dining table and the front entrance as well, but I do think it's the best decision here. Also because you can see that the sort of living room zone that we've carved out there is a rectangle going perpendicular to the rectangle of the whole open space. And And in general, when living rooms are rectangular, which most of them are, if you're gonna have one large sofa and then kind of chairs supporting it, it always feels the best when your sofa is along the long end of the rectangle. I feel like what I'm saying might be confusing, but basically when you have a rug, you want your sofa to be on the long end of it. I see a lot of people putting their sofas, which are the biggest piece of furniture in their space, at like the end of a rug, and it always just feels kind of strange. It makes the living room feel very long and skinny and less like centered and grounded. So for all of those reasons, I would put the sofa in the middle of this space here. And I also think it's a nice opportunity to kind of divide up the living room and dining room. And then I would probably put either 2 side chairs or a lounge chair at a 90-degree angle to the sofa, deeper into the space, like facing the balcony door. That way the whole living space can kind of round itself out conversationally, and the space will feel oriented to the balcony door, to the sunlight and the nice view. It won't feel like it's kind of cut off from that nice feature. I'm not going to talk too much about the smaller bedrooms, but obviously we would have a bed and nightstands in that bigger room, probably facing the window as well. And then I think that smaller room is a perfect opportunity for like a home office with a really large desk and some storage solutions. But mainly I want to talk about the open space in this video because I think those are much harder to design. So I think having the sofa kind of dividing the 2 zones, it's really important that it would feel very heavy and substantial and solid, and not like a flimsy, airy sofa. In general, I like when sofas feel very strong and like solid, and like you can really like lean into them and they won't slide around on the floor or whatever. And one way I think it's really nice to achieve that is to have a sofa with very small, like short legs that doesn't have a lot of space or air or light under it. It just feels a lot more like solid. I almost always prefer sofas that feel like this and not like this. But especially here in this position. And something else that I really loved about this apartment is that I think it really calls for a room divider, which is something that I've always kind of wanted in my apartment. I had so many cool room dividers saved on my Pinterest. And I just love the idea of like breaking up an open space with like an implied partition like that. Here, I think I would probably put it behind the sofa, on the right side of the sofa, like the side that's further from the window, mainly just to not block any light and keep the space feeling like open but still segmented. Also, I think it's kind of nice to make the bathroom feel a bit more private and like it's not opening up onto this entire open space. So that position for a room divider would be probably pretty ideal, I think. If you guys watched my space planning video, you might be surprised that I'm not putting it between the sofa and the entry door. But another thing that's pretty unique and cool about this apartment is that the door is actually angled away from the living space. Like when you walk in, you have to turn to actually enter the space, which I think is really nice. It just makes the space a little bit more private. Like if a delivery guy were to come and somebody opens the door for him, he's not seeing the entire apartment. You know what I mean? So I think that kind of curbs that uncomfortable feeling that the entry is behind you when you're sitting on a sofa. And I'm mildly embarrassed to admit, but I did Photoshop just like a general idea of like the materiality and colors and like vibe that I would bring into this space. So obviously I'm gonna share that with you guys. But before we get into that, something I really like to do when I'm working on a space plan is to identify opportunities for lamps and lighting in general, as well as artwork and plants. It doesn't mean that you'll necessarily fill all of these opportunities, even though I probably would when it comes to lamps because of who I am. But I think it's really important, especially in an apartment like this that doesn't have any overhead lighting or built-in lighting. You would definitely need to go pretty hard on the lamps. So I'm not going to talk through every single location that I've identified, but here are the potential places I would put lamps, whether they be pendants, sconces, table lamps, what have you. And then for artwork, I also like to think about the kind of grid of the space. But now that we have a general furniture plan, those can also inform the grid. So if you have like a sofa or a credenza, or really any piece of furniture that's relating to a wall, it's really important to think about the composition of the furniture with the artwork. I think it's important to balance that with the kind of composition of the whole wall. I feel like a lot of times people just center art in the middle of a wall and kind of ignore the furniture that's in front of the art, and it ends up looking not entirely cohesive. So something to think about. Here, it's not super obvious. I would make sure that any art I hung behind the lounge chair or side chairs that I have there kind of relates to them proportionally, and also relates to the balcony door that's on the other side of the space, just so the whole place feels more like balanced. And in order to kind of break up that really long wall, I wouldn't just hang another piece of art in the dining room kitchen area. I would think about something else you can put up against that wall. What came to my mind initially was like a big tree or several plants that have a cool silhouette and can kind of act as art. You guys know this because I've said it in other videos, but in general, I don't love when a space feels like littered with plants and like there's greenery on every surface and in every corner. So I would probably have that area be like the main moment where plants are, and then maybe have like another smaller moment in the living room. I also really like to have flowers a lot, so I feel like those kind of act as greenery, and I usually keep them on my coffee table. So just personally, I probably wouldn't have like a plant on my coffee table because I feel like those compete. Yeah, so those are opportunities I've identified for lamps, artwork, and greenery. And I know that I started this whole space plan by talking about the living room rug, but I think it's nice to also identify places where smaller rugs can kind of support the design and support the space plan. Maybe they're not actually laying out like the edges of a space within a space like the living room rug would here, but again, thinking about our like general grids, they definitely can enhance a design. So here I think it would be really cool to have a runner in front of the kitchen, just to give it kind of another dimension. When the kitchen is all on one wall and there's no island or other kind of surface or face that defines it, I think it's really nice to kind of define the ground in front of it. And similar for the bathroom, I think a small cool rug in there would be really nice. I wouldn't put a large rug under the dining room table. In general, when you have an open space with multiple like zones and everyone has like a big rug under it, I think it starts to feel just a little strange. Like you have all of these platforms that are like rooms. So I do think that it's important to define the dining area, but I would probably do that with a pretty substantial pendant hanging from the ceiling. I don't own that much stuff in Copenhagen because we've lived in a furnished apartment since we got here, but I did really hate the pendant that was hanging in the living room here. And so I replaced it with one of those hay rice paper pendants. So that will be coming with me to my next home. It's so sad I'm not actually moving to this apartment. This could be such a nice like first video in a series of designing my apartment. So yeah, instead of a rug, I think having a large pendant over a dining area is a really nice way to kind of define it and make it feel more intimate and like distinct from the rest of the open space. Okay, now let's get into the actual Photoshop work that I did. A lot of you were asking on my Facebook Marketplace video what software I used. It's just Photoshop. Okay, so back to looking at the space. You can see that the windows and doors are looking directly onto that exterior hallway, I'll call it, that just looks like a balcony. So that's actually a public space. So I think that this apartment would need a lot of privacy while still letting in as much daylight as possible, because it is Copenhagen at the end of the day. So I think the privacy element of this apartment definitely has some interesting implications for the window treatments that you would use. I know that a lot of people here will put like a film over a window to make it more private. I don't think that ever looks very good. I think rather than doing something subtle, I think it's nice to kind of like actually have a feature that's bringing privacy. So I feel like cafe curtains are the perfect thing for this window. Something that will not cover the entire window, but will cover like basically eye level and down, so that you feel some privacy, but you're still able to look outside and see the sky and the trees and things that are higher up. So I would definitely bring in some cafe curtains to the window here, along with Roman blinds above it, that if you did need more like significant privacy, you could always lower those. And then on the balcony door, I think probably just curtains would be enough. The reason I wouldn't rely on curtains for both the door and the window is because you would probably just end up having them shut a lot of the time. And also you can see that there's a radiator under the window, which is not good to have curtains in front of. And yeah, let's just move through the space plan that we're sort of laying out. Whatever rug I would get to sort of define the living room, I think it's pretty nice and more sophisticated when the rug doesn't have a super different hue or value compared to the flooring. So in this instance with these wood floors, I would just get a very neutral wool woven rug, something that's just going to be more of a texture change and not like a very like harsh saturated patterned element. I really like cool rugs, but I prefer to bring them in smaller moments, like the kitchen rug or bathroom rug that I was talking about. And then the other thing that I really didn't like in our sublet here, so it's basically the only piece of furniture, like big piece of furniture that I own in Copenhagen, is a teak coffee table that looks like this. So that is something that I would probably work around. I got it on Facebook Marketplace and it wasn't that expensive, but ideally my next apartment will work with it because I really love it. I think it's really nice. And then starting off with the sofa, like I said, I would want it to feel very substantial. And I also think because it's sort of dividing the dining and living room spaces, like I said, it's a nice opportunity to have some pretty significant contrast. I wouldn't do something that's very like creamy or beige. I feel like your eye kind of wants to see the like heavy thing in the center of the room. So I would go for a darker upholstery. And like I said, something that feels very solid, close to the floor, and just substantial and like grounded. And because I wouldn't really bring in color into the window treatments or the rug, I think having a cool painted colorful room divider behind the sofa here is a really nice opportunity for like a little bit of interest and fun and kind of this like central piece. So something like this. All of these pieces I'm bringing in are just from Pinterest. Some of them are one of a kind, some of them are $30,000, and some of them are just a random photo that I found. So this is more about the vibe I would go for. I'm not actually shopping or sourcing any pieces here. And then like I mentioned, I would have some greenery between the bathroom door and the living room there to kind of frame in the dining space. And also it kind of makes the bathroom feel a bit more private, which like I said, I think just makes a space feel more comfortable when there's a bathroom door opening into the main living space. And then as far as the lounge chair, armchair situation goes, I think that this is a nice opportunity to bring in maybe like a slightly interesting pattern or color. Just like my personal taste and who I am, I probably wouldn't do something super loud here, but I don't know, maybe bringing in like a cool stripe or a cool plaid upholstery that works well with the sofa and the rug, I think would be pretty nice. Also a wood element to tie in with the coffee table would be nice. So this is a chair by Olivia Bossy. I'm not really sure how you say her name. She's a very talented designer that you guys should all go follow on Instagram. And I'm obsessed with this chair of hers. So let's pretend I could get this chair in Copenhagen. Oh, also let's put the hay pendant in the background there, which you would see from this angle. Looking at this, it's kind of going down the Emma Roberts trap, which is just very thick. All of these materials are very soft. And I think we don't want to end up there. So I would definitely bring in something that feels a bit harder in a side table next to the sofa there. I think like a chrome table would really do the job of just like freshening it up a little bit. And that element, I think, is one of the most important things in interiors, like always having a broad spectrum of materials and balancing your dualities of like hard and soft and dark and light and all of those things. And then, like I mentioned, I would have flowers on our coffee table, probably. I really want to get better at flower arrangements this summer. That's just like a little note. I think I feel very inspired by some cool florists on Instagram and Pinterest, and I don't know, I feel like that's something I want to explore a bit. So yeah, I think this is looking pretty cool. I would love to live here. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to. And then let's talk about the space from the other view, because something that's missing here is the TV wall element. I think having this wall with doors on either side is a really nice opportunity to do something pretty impactful. I have had such a crush on the Vitsu modular wall system designed by Dieter Rams. I've wanted that in my house for years, probably ever since I first saw it. But I, of course, am not made of money. I can't really afford that. But I do think that his design from the 60s has inspired a lot of really nice, like, quality designs. I think there's a lot of more affordable alternatives. So I would love the idea of doing something like that. In general, this apartment doesn't have that much storage, so I think maximizing it all on that wall and having some shelves where we can display our books and things that we love and can kind of tie in with some closed storage and a TV, and maybe even incorporating like a little bit of a desk moment. I just love the idea of like a big modular wall unit like that. So I think having that as like the main primary thing that your eye goes to on the back wall when you walk in would be really lovely. And then in the dining space here, under my lovely hay rice paper pendant, I think I would keep the furniture relatively minimal. I really like the idea of bringing in more wood tones that work with the wood flooring. So maybe having a darker wood tone that has a similar undertone to it in the chairs and the table could look really nice. And these chairs are all over my Pinterest. I'm absolutely obsessed with them. So let's pretend that I could have those. And then if we put up the room divider again, you can see how that would really define the dining space from the living space and make them both feel a bit more comfortable. Yeah, that's as far as I got with photoshopping this apartment that's not my apartment that I had a crush on. Is this like way too much? Am I weird for having such a strong crush on a home? Maybe not. I don't know. Do you guys do this? Maybe the person who actually won the application lottery will see this video and get a few ideas. I don't know. But yes, our hunt continues. We're seeing many more apartments. Right now I'm finishing to film and we're gonna go see an apartment in like 20 minutes. So yeah, I hope this was fun and I'll see you next week. Bye.